Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry. With me as always is...
There's been a slight misuse of the substance. Eddie of Edward's Truth.
And that title drop, that's what we're talking about today. Is The Substance, released September 20th, 2024. This is... We've not covered a new-ish release in a while. I can't remember. I guess Maxine was the last one that we did. Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of like newer stuff that I feel is like conversational. You know that.
Well, I mean, I can talk about anything. So,
I know you can talk. I know you can talk about anything. But yeah. Well, yeah, we've talked about that. It feels like there's the cultural relevance of things has gotten less and less just with the fact that movies come and go so quickly now. And I mean, a lot of it is on streaming, but The Substance is actually one that's like, you know, had a lasting impression. And, that's why I feel it's warranted to talk about, because everyone is talking about this. I mean, the Demi Moore Academy Awards
nomination.
She won the Golden Globe. She won
for like a comedy or musical, which was strange that they dubbed this a comedy to me.
Well, okay.
I mean, I laugh sometimes.
So here's my thought on that. Let's delve into that right away.
Okay.
Here. Because I was actually just talking to Eric beforehand, because like I've seen this movie twice now. Like I saw it in the theater and then I saw it again, and just this morning. And he wanted to know like what was my take on it this time, because I had notes the last time, but he asked me because I did also see Anora, and he wanted to know who. Do I agree with the Mikey Madison winning the Oscar? And my answer to that was like, I mean, it's neither here nor there. Like, I don't really think too much of it, and I don't think that in terms of the Oscars, like I don't follow them very much. But this year seemed to not be like there wasn't really any front runners in terms of like anything. It just seemed to kind of be a crapshoot, for lack of a better word, in terms of like who's gonna get it. But it's funny that you say that in terms of like just like the Golden Globe category of like what she won for, because I do think that in terms of like what this was, I think that Demi's performance is at its best in the scene where she's not going on the date, where she's getting ready, and it's just like there's all this pathos involved, and just like this insecurity, and she looks absolutely stunning, and she just doesn't see it because she's just like constantly reminded of the better version of herself or whatever, to the point where she just stands the guy up and just sits there moping, and I feel like there wasn't enough of that in this movie. I think that had there been more, that maybe there would have been an argument like for a drama, like a performance, a dramatic performance. But watching it again today, I was just reminded of like all the over the top, like silly shit in the movie, like her making like that chicken concoction, whatever, and like just the eggs beating and like spraying all over her face, and like like mimicking Sue on the TV, and it's just like they really leaned heavily into that. I mean, I guess like that you could call camp aspect of the movie and her performance, and I think that that's probably why it's more considered comical. But then like I look at something like Anora and Mikey Madison's performance, and like, by the way, Mikey Madison's performance was great in that. I wasn't like thrilled about the movie. I think it's pretty average, but Anora, but she was the standout, and she was hilarious in that movie too. So I don't know if she was nominated for like musical comedy as well, or was she nominated for?
Oh, for Mikey, I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't even watch, so I do not know.
But it seemed.
Yeah, I doubt it.
But I think in terms of like both performances, Mikey's was a lot more focused in terms of just like what the material was that she was working with, whereas I feel like with the substance and like everything that Demi was doing, it was kind of like tonally all over the place. I mean, I really wanted Demi to win. Like, I think that just like in terms of like the story of it all, of just sort of like her being this underdog in the industry and kind of, you know, coming back, because like nobody saw Demi coming out of nowhere here. Like I mean, her you know, people could say like she peaked in the 90s, or, you know, like Ghost, or what was the one she was it Striptease, which I mean was just notoriously a bad movie, but that was like her, like a big deal for her at the time. And I remember that when Charlie's Angels Full Throttle came out, that was sort of like a second coming for her, because she just showed up, and I think she was like 40 at the time, and just was stunning. Like, everyone was just like going crazy about her, and she looks exactly the same now as she did then. But yeah, she did Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, and then like, you know, when she does show up, it's just like in like random things here and there. Like, what was the one with Scarlett Johansson where all like the girlfriends are having a bachelorette party, and I think that Demi was the neighbor.
Oh, I didn't even see. I don't even know.
The one with like Kate McKinnon, and I think it was Rough Night.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
There were a few. There were like a handful of movies that were exactly like that premise. Like, wasn't there also like Bachelorette Party with like Kirsten Dunst and Rebel Wilson and Lizzie Kaplan? I think
probably.
Was it? Yeah, there were a few.
The point being is that like Demi had kind of like fallen into this like very peripheral supporting character role that would just like show up for a scene or two and disappear. So it's, you know, the fact that she just sort of like had this huge comeback with the substance was like a pretty special thing. And I mean, she did get her Golden Globe, and I think that she had a very beautiful speech because of that. But it's like, in a way, I know that like her not winning the Oscar was a huge upset.
And I got messages in my DMs from a few people that week that followed the Oscars where the general messaging was, I think they were looking for, you know, we're horror fans and we like to be catty, and I think they expected me to kind of pile on with them, and they just said like, and by the way, Demi was robbed, you know. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't feel that way. I honestly, number one, I don't care. I've said it many times on this pod. The Oscars, as far as I'm concerned, should not exist, except to just kind of push forward films that you might fall through the slats of your periphery, like otherwise, like to kind of bring more stuff to the forefront. And it's become, they're wrestling with it, because like I find the Oscar bait formula dwindling and working less and less and becoming more and more part of the conversation. Like, people saying like, we're tired of biopics, we're tired of like awarding actors for playing other actors or singers who lived before them and getting rewarded when somebody else is creating a performance from absolutely nothing except for some words on a page and some direction, and all of a sudden like a person is born before us who we feel like we know and get close to, which I do feel like both Mikey Madison and Demi Moore did with their roles. So honestly, I walked into this season going, well, if either one of them could win, I would not be angry about either of them getting their flowers this particular season, because I think they both invested their hearts, souls, guts, and bodies. They were both filmed top to bottom in some of the most like uncompromising, you know, situations and vulnerable situations that you can put an actor, and I think they both came out with flying colors. So I when I found out Mikey won, I was just kind of like, good for her. Yeah. And I just hope Demi is onto her next project already, you know?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I was surprised because like Mikey Madison kind of disappeared. She fell off after Scream 5. And yeah, like she wasn't in anything for a while.
I
And
didn't
apparently,
see her in anything, yeah.
apparently, and we'll get to the substance. Don't worry. They
Welcome to the Oscar breakdown on the Cherry Picker.
Sean Baker cast her in Honora after seeing her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Scream, but she played a similar character in both. And I guess just for her like energy. And I mean, I've been very critical of not Mikey, but Amber, the character, because I like don't care for her as a ghost face. But holy shit, like she really surprised me. And not that I didn't think that she could do it, but I loved seeing her do something else and be funny. You know, just like the material that she was given was more conducive to her skills. So again, I have no say in who deserved it, but in terms of what you were saying about the Oscars, I remember when like the last time I watched the Oscars, like legitimately and in full, was probably like in the early 2000s, and that was still a time where movies, like the movies that were being nominated, were movies that people were seeing. Now it feels like the movies that get nominated are like these tiny little limited release things that are only made for the Oscars. They're not movies that are being made for consumption by mass audiences. And that's just, there's something that just feels very weird about that. And of course, because of that, that's just like we're getting further and further away from horror being recognized. So it's interesting that the substance of all movies is the one that's sort of, breaking those boundaries. Because, and as I'll get to in this episode, I don't think that this movie is all that great. There are things that I really love about it. And I am excited to talk about those because I think that they're very important facets. And I'm happy for the movie that it did win. Was it like makeup effects and
I think so.
Yeah, because that is well deserved. But when you look at like the pantheon of or like the select few horror movies that have actually managed to slip through the cracks of the Oscars, I mean, most of them I don't really like as it is. Like Silence of the Lambs is obviously a huge exception to that. But I mean, like, I was never a fan of The Sixth Sense. You know how I feel about Jaws. Was Get Out nominated for Best Picture?
Yes, it was.
Okay, yeah. That I can fuck with, but
there's a few you can get on board with and a few you can't. It's also a crapshoot for you, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. But in the spirit of the Oscars recognizing horror more and more, like I'm cool with it. I'm glad that like The Substance is that movie that kind of slipped through the cracks in that case.
Sure, and whatever is going to stand the test of time, I believe that Demi's performance is absolutely going to stand the test of time, and that people will still be talking about it years from now. And I hope, and I'm glad that they will be. I hope that they will be. And at the same time, I was thinking about it because I was watching it for my screening last night, and I was sitting there thinking, just kind of having these images like floating in my head, or these words, these phrases from people, like these buzzwords around the Oscars and about her being robbed and everything. And I just thought, like, well, I mean, okay, sometimes they get it right, sometimes they got it wrong. Jodie Foster got it for Clarice in Silence of the Lambs. I think we can all agree, well deserved. But Sissy Spacek did not for Carrie. Piper Laurie did not for Carrie. Oh shit! Why am I losing her name? Oh God, I'm gonna kill myself.
Well, there's so many that just like didn't even get nominations. Like Tony Collette, Hereditary.
I always say Lupita Nyong'o for us. Mia Goth for
Pearl. Oh my God!
Jesus Christ!
What the fuck?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And why can't I remember? I'm so old. What is that? Help me out. It's gonna come to my Linda Blair in The Exorcist, nominated but not won, and that is a performance we are still talking about to this day. So you know what? At least she got nominated. At least she got to go around the world and just be celebrated. And I hope, like I said, I hope she's already moved on to the next thing because she deserves.
I mean, the thing is, like, a nomination in and of itself is a win. I think for any of it, because like how many people like how many movies and how many people and projects don't even get recognized. So the fact that they do, and I mean, you know, it's I think it's a nice thing. So yeah, good for everyone. Everyone's a winner.
Everybody gets an Oscar. You get a tiny honorary Oscar just for participating.
Yeah. All right. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into it. If you're new to the Cherry Picker, or if you've been listening for a while and you want to give back a little bit, you can head over to my Patreon account. That's patreon.com/ZackCherry, ZackCherry, and support at any tier, and you'll get early access to all of our Cherry Picker episodes. If you are supporting at the Freddy Krueger tier, you will get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is the bonus episode we run once a month. Last month we did Fuck, Marry, Kill Scream Edition. So there's always something fun going on. We don't know what it's going to be this month. We got to talk about that because that's going to be whatever we do next week. But huge back catalog of hours and hours of the two of us bickering with each other over fun topics. So check it out and give a little back to the podcast. But I do want to thank some of my Patreon supporters and supporters of the podcast. So thank you to Michael Myers tier supporters, Kyle Beard, Maxime Rivest, Ali Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horrorslut95, Traj125, Bruce the Genetic, Jack Hammer, Rando, Gary Blasick, Michael Boswell, and thank you to the Ghostface supporters, Eric Champney, Sam Levy, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, Garrison Nichols, and Craig Lynn. Edward, what's the substance about?
Well, I'm glad you asked. When once celebrated Hollywood film star Elizabeth Sparkle loses her long-running aerobics TV spot on her 50th birthday, a mysterious young nurse covertly throws her a lifeline and a flash drive, offering a vague promise to a younger, more beautiful, more perfect version of herself. But once an activator serum injection generates a younger woman out of Elizabeth's body, the question remains whether both beings will now respect the balance of their shared existence or be cursed by their binding via the substance. Huh?
Or the sounds that are like,
the movie. Kicks ass.
Yeah, okay. So what I really love about The Substance is that this is a movie that has its own identity, visually, aesthetically. The world of this movie is not planet Earth. You know, it's like this is a universe that exists entirely within The Substance. And I love when movies do that, because it's almost like it allows you to break the rules, in a sense that like you're not bound to like any, like, logic doesn't always matter in situations like this, where, you know, for instance, you can look at like, well, how's she getting like every other week off, or things like that. You know, it doesn't matter. There's just like, she lives in this penthouse apartment where there's a huge billboard right in front of her window of Sue, like 24/7. Like, none of it makes any sense, and yet it just works. And it doesn't, and because of that, it stands on its own. There's nothing like The Substance that exists out there.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I appreciate the references. Like, every now and then, like, homages go overboard, especially like in recent years when we have talked about recent releases and stuff like that. So many directors seem to be devoid of original ideas that they're constantly referencing what came before, to the point where it's exhausting to me, because it's like, okay, yeah, I love it too, but if I want that, I'll just go see that. But when you do it properly, it just kind of feeds something and creates this almost intergenerational connective tissue among the genre. And because this is a horror movie, I appreciate, like, it was brought to my attention even before I saw the movie the first time, the nods to Kubrick with, you know, like the shining of it all, with the hallway that they're always roaming down in, the bathroom, the restroom where she overhears for the first time from Harvey, like, talking on the phone about how she's too old and she's exed and they got to get somebody young and tight and whatever. And but there were other things too, like even just like allusions that just inspired a response from me. Like the first thing I thought when I saw Sue in her New Year's blue dress was Cinderella. And there's even later on, when we're looking at the audience, there's an exposure to a little girl who is dressed up exactly like Sue or Cinderella, this kind of princess ideal that we feed young girls and boys, frankly, and non-binary children who just to kind of like program them, this is the standard to which you're going to be held, and that you need to hold yourself to if you want to be loved and be perceived as pretty. So like and then there's other things like 2001. I get a lot of that from when we see the lockers for the first time, just the whiteness, the aseptic quality of it all. And then even later when Monstro Elizasu reveals herself to the public, we get that 2001 Space Odyssey. Wah, 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 ba-dum. So obviously Kubrick is an influence here, but I also get like De Palma, like this weird kind of mixing of Carrie's prom energy with, you know, like with the blues and the reds and the blood splatter and everything like that. And I'm sure, you know, Argento thusly too, because as we've said before, all American directors of the late 20th century were influenced by Argento, at least aesthetically.
Well, it's almost like a cycle. Like it starts with Hitchcock, and then it's Argento and De Palma.
Sure.
So okay. So what? How exactly did like the references work for you? Because you're just saying that like it didn't feel like it was on the nose to you. Because like to me it did, and I specifically, I mean, we can talk about the hallway, which was very much The Shining hallway, because they went up and down this hallway so many times. And I mean, like this is part of my gripe about, you know, just the movie having way too much filler in it. But, you know, obviously they built this thing, they wanted to get their usage out of it. But
sure,
the homages or the references to me felt like they really stood out. Because I watched this and I was actually thinking like this movie is 2 hours and 21 minutes, and for some reason I was thinking about The Shining, because, you know, we're seeing all of this. I'm like, The Shining is pretty long too. It's 2 hours and 26 minutes, so it's got 5 extra minutes. But that movie flies by for me, you know, like whereas this doesn't. And I feel like a lot of the times that we take to just like, I guess, simmer in these homages just feels like time wasted to me.
Well, I mean, for me, you say simmer. For me, I think it's more along the lines of like kind of setting a stage in a familiar setting to evoke a particular reaction. And then we continue on with the trajectory of not necessarily even the story, but just of the progression of this woman's ordeal and like what she has coming at her and how she fields it, how she dodges it, or how she takes it and just tries to keep going. And the thing is, I think largely what it is a concept piece. Therefore, I use the word amorphous a lot when I talk about it in a sense of something that I like, that I respond to. The reason why I respond to it is because I feel like as I'm watching, let's start at the beginning. At least from the beginning for Elizabeth, the first moment that we meet her, we see Demi Moore in her exercise gear doing her kind of like Jane Fonda-esque workouts and everything like that. Yeah. And cheering people on and everything. And I remember the first time I saw this movie, all I could think when I looked at Elizabeth was, wow, God, she looks amazing. You know, haven't seen you in a while, Demi, and oh my God. And I love that that was my first reaction because it informed my reaction to everything else that happened to her after that, because I stopped feeling like a moviegoer and I started to feel like her friend, and like I was watching her circle the drain a bit, and just all I wanted to do, which I kind of did like a little under my breath in my seat, was just go like, get out of Hollywood. Just go away. Just extricate yourself from the entire situation and start a new one. Just go to the other side of the country, leave the country, go to Europe. I kept thinking, like, as she was like sitting in her home pre and post the substance, she was already in a depression before she ever injected it, and I'm just like, darling, go to Italy, go to France, go to, like, see the world, like, see something, pull yourself out of yourself and just kind of offer yourself up to the world, because there are people who will love to have you. And so I think that's a huge part of why the references, because it doesn't feel kind of like the concept itself, it feels more like ingredients in this recipe to put together this movie that Coralie, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
Coralie Fargiet?
Oh,
I have no idea.
I thought it was
I didn't watch the Oscars, so I did. Fargo.
Yeah, I didn't hear them say her name, so I don't know.
Fargon.
I think she's amazing. Coralie. We'll just call her
Coralie.
I say Coralie.
You just made me realize what I am missing from this movie. And that is a path not traveled for this character. Because you talk about this idea of just leave the country, go embark on a new adventure, do something. And we weren't presented with that. And I think that had we been, I think that would have made a lot stronger of an impact for the choice that she does make, because there's, and I'm going to reference a lot that I feel like this film wastes a lot of time. But at the beginning, we she gets the USB drive, she watches the thing, and her first response to it is just to like throw it in the trash. And then we get her going out to a bar to celebrate her birthday by herself. And the only thing that like really kind of propels her to then change her mind is she's there drinking alone, sees this couple canoodling, and then goes home and chooses to use it. And I feel like had there been a crossroads for her, that might have been like a more compelling thing for her to be like, no, okay, I'm gonna stick with this. I'm gonna take the substance. Where it just felt like kind of, we talked about this in our Insidious episode, where it just like Lynn Shay shows up. She's like, this is how we're going to save your son. And then Patrick Wilson is just like, no, this is all a bunch of like hooey to me. And then there's like what precedes is like a 5-minute segment of him seeing photos on the wall and then deciding, okay, let's do this. But there's nothing
from his kid,
which logically don't make sense because the kid has been in a coma or in the astral.
He did it before he went into coma.
No. Anyway, it doesn't make it doesn't make sense.
We had that pod. We already had that conversation,
and I was right. But what I'm saying is that it's just like you presented an option in the argument that you made, where I feel like had there been someone to be like, hey, like, or a friend or whatever, like, come do this. Like, let's like explore something else, then it would have made it feel a little more impactful to be like, no, let's stay here. Let's decide to take the substance. So I feel like that was missing for me. No, go ahead.
Okay, see, because I feel like that is represented by the presence of Fred from 10th grade homeroom, the guy who comes in and like tells her that she's still the most beautiful girl in the world and gives her his phone number and everything like that. And because it's employed, we do get to see what she does with that offer. Yeah, I think that's where
that's presented later on in the movie. I agree with you. And that's what I was saying at the beginning. I wanted more of that. I wanted more stuff like that. But like when we're first introduced to Fred, he's kind of like, awkward and creepy. Like she has no and that's kind of like what I like about the whole conceit of this character and like the date is that there's no way that she would ever go out with this guy. She has absolutely no interest in him. But it gets to a point where she's so lonely that like this is the only lifeline that is left. And yes, she could have gone on that date. She could have, I mean, he would have worshipped her. You know, she looked stunning, but it was just one of those things. It was just like her own insecurities were like overcame her so much that it was just like she couldn't do that. But that in and of itself, that was the most profound thing about the movie. And it was isolated to one tiny section.
Right. Well, because she was only giving herself one out. See, okay, there's a lot to address here because, oh my God, it's so dense. I love talking about this movie. But because I agree with you in the sense that like I sat through the movie, particularly in my first sitting, just kind of going like, God, doesn't she have a friend? I just wish she had like a gay best friend to go, honey, you don't need that mess. You go across, you go to New York City, you go to Paris, you go to Milan, you go wherever, and they will roll out the carpet for you. You are Elizabeth Sparkle. There is only one of you. Like we would buoy her up. Or a female friend, someone who can give her some kind of like context for like what it is that she's going through and normalize things for her, or both, or even more. Like, I mean, if there could have been any attempt to reach outside of her immediate experience, her soul lonely trudge through this movie, then I agree that could have saved her. But the thing is, I love the fact that the film has me wanting that for her so urgently. I don't feel like it's a defect of the movie of not employing it enough. I feel like it's a comment about what a person at that level of desperation, self-loathing, and a lack of faith in their ability to exist outside of the framework of what's familiar by this point. I love that she can't even imagine that for herself because that's how little she thinks of herself. And I think that what Coralie did as a filmmaker was, instead of introducing a friend into the mix, she made us as the audience Elizabeth's friend. Because that's another thing. It creates for me a weird appetite for someone to move in and take care of her and be kind to her. And I love that the first thing that we see after she injects the substance, and we see the separation, and then we get to see Sue kind of like, you know, experiencing herself and you know, kind of taking in the situation. I love the fact that her immediate instinct is to care for the woman on the floor and to intuitively know to sew up her back and to pick up, you know, this food and keep her fed for like the next 7 days. Because all it did was create more questions in my head, but more questions that made me just want to watch the movie to continue to find out what is happening. Has her, because in my initial viewing, I remember wondering, so her consciousness has now left Elizabeth and gone into Sue, so she can live 7 days as Sue and then has to shut Sue down and then live 7 days as Elizabeth to rejuvenate, and then back and forth. And then I found out, oh no, they are two separate entities with an absolute binding between the two of them, but it isn't a hive mind, but there is some kind of almost supernatural, unexplained, ethereal connection where they can share memories, they can dream or have nightmares that include things that are happening to the other one. And I love that it's never really fully explained. It's just this kind of like, these are the rules. The people who crafted the substance determined you are inexorably bound for the rest of your days now, and it's up to you. There is no you and her. You are one. That is the rule. And if you continue to see that in yourself and feed into this codependent, now that there's two of you, this codependent relationship, you'll be fine. But because that is not the nature of Sue, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's youth, I don't know if it's inexperience, I don't know if it's self-absorption and buying into the machine. I think it's a little bit of all of it. But I think that's the biggest thing for me that I got this second time viewing was just Elizabeth. Really, truly, it broke my heart that Sue, who's comprised of Elizabeth's DNA and whatnot, her first instinct when she saw that there was an opportunity to hire someone to replace Elizabeth was to go right back into that machine and try to be good enough, because I feel like those are Elizabeth's impulses. And it just hurt me because, again, all I want is to see a woman in Elizabeth's predicament pre the substance realize this is not the end for me. there is a life beyond this. I need to get myself out of this and start thinking about what are the other possibilities for me, instead of seeing this as an end and letting other people's impressions of me define what makes me beautiful, what makes me worthy. I need to be able to define and continually redefine that for myself as long as I'm breathing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, so a few things, because
yes, I know it's a lot.
So just to first go back to what you were addressing in terms of the isolation and the loneliness and I guess the merits of the character not having a friend. I agree 100%. I think that had this been edited down a lot, that story would have worked for me. Like this is Coralie is credited as the main editor. There's 3 editors on this film, and I mean, I think there's something to be said for directors not editing their own movies.
Sure.
Because there's this is out of control. There's this could have been 45 minutes shorter. And I think that if that was streamlined, yes, I think that absolutely that story could have been told of just this isolation. But because it's just like we're hitting the same beat so many times, I feel that like the message is very heavy-handed here. We're just kind of like treading through it again and again. It would have been nice to have some other type of action happening. If there was a friend character that just sort of comes in and it's just like, where have you been? I haven't seen you for a week or whatever, like just stuff like that, kind of like seeing the character kind of having the walls closed in on them, because it's just like, there's this secret life that they're hiding, and vice versa. So yeah, I think that there's an argument to be made for both. I just think with what we're presented in the final product of 2 hours and 21 minutes, I needed more, just to justify that that runtime. Now, in terms of the biology or the psychology, both really, because this is a question I had for you, and you kind of answered it. Because when I initially watched the movie, I did not get the impression that these are 2 separate entities. Like they are of the same, but like the movie keeps reminding us, the voice on the phone keeps reminding us, there is no she, it is you. You are one. You are one. But the movie is, by presenting this, it's just like, no, there's 2 of you. You are making 2 separate decisions. So when Demi or Elizabeth is on the phone just being like, she's taking advantage of the substance, and the voice on the phone telling her like, no, there is no she. I'm like, yes, there is. Yes, there fucking well is. And it makes me it's like this hypocrisy that I don't know if like the movie is aware of, or just like it wasn't refined enough to understand that, but it needed to be one or the other. It needed to, they had a shared consciousness, or like they shared the same soul or whatever. Like that is one thing. Or if like biologically they were 2 different things, like I needed it to pick a side, and I don't think that it picked or a lane. I don't think that it did. It was sort of like hovering in between, and it made it very confusing. But the idea of like them sharing, like them being one being essentially, and just like, I guess, transporting itself through body week after week makes sense to me, because it's the same character. And I think that would have worked really well, because it justifies Elizabeth, or Sue in this case, being like, I need a little bit more. I'm going to be a little selfish because I'm having more fun in this body than I am in that body. And I'm going to take an extra day or whatever it is here. And then kind of coming back and seeing the effects of that on the other end, where she's got the witch finger or whatever you want to call it. And I think that there's like, it also makes sense when you look at the characters, because it's like she's watching the show, she's watching like the Pump It Up or whatever it's called with Sue.
Sure.
And had that been like I was there, I experienced that was me, but I'm watching it from this like out of body experience, and there's something psychologically damaging about that, because it's like I know that that's not me, like it is, but it's not. And I feel that like with everything, like even the craziness of her, like, you know, making the chicken and the eggs and all that splattering on her,
yeah,
and her like, you know, looking at the TV when she's just like, and she's like, you know, like all that stuff. Like, yeah, I can totally get that. Like, she's starting to hate herself as this person. It's just like she's getting to enjoy all this, but like it being her the entire time. And I feel that there's something about that, just like what it says about us psychologically, that is far more interesting than the movie being like these two biological entities. Because I don't get, like, I know you're talking about Sue emerging from her back and then just like having the wherewithal to know to like sew her up and doing all this and just like caring about her. And I didn't see that. I just thought it's just like she knows because she is Elizabeth and she's just following through with the instructions of what she has to do, because like she certainly does know a lot and she's doing a lot and she's taking care of it. And it does feel like she's, you know, at the beginning, like, yeah, I want to take care of myself. Like, this is me. This is like the real me, that it would make sense for her to have a little bit of care for that. But as she would go along and become more absorbed in this sexier, younger lifestyle, that she would, you know, become more complacent about the Elizabeth version of herself. And that makes sense to me. So that's why this whole idea that they're two different things, like that really like fucked with me.
Yeah.
And like, you know, when they're both conscious at the same time, once we get into the third act, it's just sort of like, the movie's losing me.
Oh, see, no, okay. I understand what you're saying. The only thing that, because I was looking for clues the entire time, trying to decipher, like I said, I thought it was like one consciousness floating from body to body, until I realized, oh, your memories are not your memories. There is this thing that links the two of you that is undeniable, and that seems to like, the more I watch it, the more I kind of realize like, oh, maybe it's more like twins, because twins, you know, occupy like the same egg, literally, and what's the first thing we're seeing on screen in this movie is an egg dividing. So I'm just like, okay, so maybe it's genetically makes the most sense to think of it in terms of twins, except if you think of one twin as being born maybe 20, 30 years later. So I think there is like, in addition to replication, there is this weird kind of like unexplainable, because I think it's unexplainable in twins as well, this unexplainable shared consciousness at times that is, you know, like it can go in and out like the tide on the beach. And that, and I was fine to just kind of let that ambiguity exist. Because we don't, it's like I said, with twins, there's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of unanswered questions in terms of like, but that's another thing that I fucking loved about this movie, is that the unanswered questions became a feature of it. Because from the get-go, once Elizabeth Sparkle has been granted access with this flash drive to the knowledge of this substance and everything like that, that commercial is so oblique and hazy. It's just kind of like big buzzwords to keep in your head because they're memorable and they're good for business, because we got to keep it simple and we got to just drill this, but there's no explanation. And it made me think also, because I went into this movie, a lot of people kept posting those memes of like Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep and Death Becomes Her, and with a little tagline underneath saying they would have loved the substance. And I thought like, oh, so I guess it's kind of like Death Becomes Her, before I went in for the first time. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, kind of, but not really. Because I immediately wished, again, in terms of like connection with a person outside of yourself, I would have loved to have seen Elizabeth wander into Isabella Rossellini as Liesl's, you know, giant palace, and have her coach her through, you know, like what's going to happen to her and what she's buying into, and be just very, very like upfront about it. Instead, it is this faceless corporate entity that has the Amazon hub locker from hell. And I love the fact that like, it's so underground. It's so, I mean, so was Death Becomes Her, but this was in a different way. Like, she went into a back alley, went to a metal door that only rolled up about half the way, so she had to stoop in and basically crawl for a moment to get to her destination. So it is not just asking for your discretion, it is asking for your humility. It is asking for you to degrade yourself to the point, like, it wants you desperate. So you'll keep coming back to that fucking locker and keep following the vague instructions. Because, again, while she was injecting, I was like, do you even know what this is, Elizabeth? I was her friend going like, don't do this, girl. You don't know that. If it goes wrong, who are you going to sue? You don't know these people. And I noticed the second time in the screening, every time she called on the phone, it sounds like an LP. So I'm like, maybe it's not even a real voice she's listening to. Maybe they are covering their tracks so much that there are like recorded responses on a record that someone is just flipping the needle everywhere it needs to go.
Like, who could she sue? Sue.
Sue.
Because, like, I don't think that there's ever an exchange of a contract. She doesn't give her credit card information. It's just like, hey, do you want this? Sure. And this is not a complaint, because this is part of the universe of the movie, where it's just like, this is the logic that doesn't matter. So I'm not saying this is a complaint. I actually enjoy this, but this leads to, and more of my previous argument, is that why is this nurse and this is why it just makes it seem like they're the same person, because he gives her this thing, but then the old guy in the diner is like clearly like he's following her, so he knows. So I mean, I guess that's what you're saying is like this shared consciousness, but it just like the whole thing makes me wonder, like, why would you want to do this in the first place? Because it's sort of like, there's literally nothing in it for Elizabeth, because all it is like you get to take a 7-day long nap, which I mean might be kind of an incentive, but this is not your experience. And if the only thing that you get is sort of like this vague consciousness of like these experiences of, memories of doing it, like that feels like a huge ripoff. I mean, if you were to pay for it. If you paid. But that's why when she calls, like after she's already like, gray in the hair and like the mummification has like kind of reached her face, or whatever you want to call it, and they're just like, you're the Matrix, you can stop this at any time you want. Do you want to stop it? And at first, like, she's just like, no. I'm like, well, why not? Like, why wouldn't she? Like, what's the purpose of continuing on with it? So that's just more leading to why this inconsistency is just confusing to me. It feels like there's two different movies that are playing here, and I'm not sure which one it's trying to be all the time.
Well, you're speaking from a very logical, kind of sensible headspace.
I know.
And I think the point is that Elizabeth is not there, that she is consumed with self-loathing. She is absorbed in her insecurity. Let's, aside from the substance, what kind of person is going to be treated and talked about the way that she was by Harvey and by all of these grinning, the hallway of white men is just what I see them as when Sue comes back into the picture with, the execs or whoever they are, just these men in suits who, even when I've been on auditions for like studio gigs and stuff, and you never know who's behind the table. You're just kind of like, I hope they're friendly. I hope they like me. I hope I get the job. Need to pay my taxes. But anyway, she, so what kind of mindset is going to propel somebody to want to go back to a terrain like that and succeed? Because like, what are you really succeeding at? You're like, okay, I showed them I'm good enough, or at least a part of me is good enough. Something that's comprised of my DNA went in there and they're good enough, and that's going to have to be enough for me. It doesn't make sense, and I don't think it's supposed to. I think it's supposed to speak to Elizabeth's mental state and her emotional state and the way she views herself, and the fact that like she is so beyond, and I feel like the movie backs this up, she's so beyond believing that she has something of value to offer anymore. She's convinced herself, even like down to the point where she is terminating Sue with the needle in her chest, and she does it. She goes through with it, and then immediately says the line is something, I believe, I might paraphrase here, but something to the effect of like, I need you because I hate myself. that's what it is. It's about convincing yourself that the only way I am going to succeed from here on out is through you. And I think it's something that parents do with children. I think it's something that people, when they create like some kind of like ideal, some kind of like magazine cover image of themselves, like I could get all of this if only I looked like that. She's literally got her magazine cover self roaming the world for 7 days at a time when she's playing by the rules and succeeding and proving you're right. If you had all of this today, you could still be playing the game. So the only way you're going to get to still play the game is vicariously. And that is such bullshit. And the reason why it upsets me so much with The Date is because I felt the way you did. I didn't quite know what to make of Fred. I thought, oh, well, he called her the most beautiful girl in the world. There are other people who will feel that way about you. Keep going. Keep talking to people outside of yourself. And she didn't. But he was the only person she knew who could make her feel good about herself. So the fact that she was reaching out to him, that alone was like a boon to my faith in her and my heart, my willingness to just kind of like, let's watch her succeed. And because I mean, even if it doesn't work out with him, I'm not saying like put all your hopes and wishes on him. I'm saying go out on a date, make yourself feel good, put on them gloves. If he saw the finger, maybe he wouldn't even give a shit. But for right now, you do what you got to make yourself feel pretty. Leave the house, have an evening. It's going to go however it's going to go. But you know what? If it doesn't work out, there are other evenings. There are other men. There are other terrains. But at least she was taking a step outside of her predicament, and that's what I wanted.
I feel like your analysis of Elizabeth is spot on. Like everything about this character, like you're right. You know this everything with her inside and out, and I can't disagree with any of that. But I want to ask you, what is your take on Sue then? Because this is where I feel is where it kind of like flies off the handle a little bit, because I don't think that we get Sue developed as a character really. And it would, like, had they been the shared soul or whatever, I could get that. But like, what is your take on her? Because I feel that Sue is really very underdeveloped as a character.
I think that's also important because I think Sue is, number one, I think she's like a corporately processed parasite. I think that's, if there's anything propelling the young nurse to recruit Elizabeth and to recruit anyone really to get this going, it's so there can be more Sues in the world living their lives fully actualized, taking advantage of the people behind them, standing on the shoulders of them and not giving them any kind of like respect or credit or health. So that's one way I see her. I also see her as a Frankenstein monster. I see her as just like a creature that has been simultaneously created and invented, so therefore is at once natural and unnatural. She's, the mirror image, an exact replica and yet a complete perversion of the original. And I also think that she is a worst case scenario of who Elizabeth is or could be. Because I feel like I said, when she first came into the world, she was the first person to show kindness that I could recognize and kind of feel warmth toward, as she was so, because that is a commitment to sew someone's back up. And so she's like putting the stitches through. And even I remember thinking like, well, should she move her? Like, it seems, is she kind of discarding her? Is she kind of like, by leaving her on the floor like that? Well, if she drags her around, like she risks like, the wound like getting infected or getting ripped, torn or messed with. So yeah, leave her on the bathroom floor. And then when Elizabeth was leaving her on the bathroom floor, I'm like, okay, so this is your safe room. This is almost kind of like ground zero for the two of you, where you can just kind of like come back to home base, know that you're going to be safe, and then go off and do your thing once you've taken care of your responsibilities. But I think what she does, because again, she has Elizabeth's genetic makeup and Elizabeth's instincts, Elizabeth's priorities.
Do you think
she
that
buys into the lie?
Do you think that
power?
Do you think that Sue is what Elizabeth looked like when she was that age?
No.
Okay.
Which
is like her younger self. Okay, but
even her eye color is different. So I feel like, again, like she's an exact replica yet not. So I wonder.
Yeah, it's like
the
like
shot
a Frankenstein
over her star. Yeah, thing. Over her Hollywood star. I wondered if that was Margaret Qualley like standing, like, because it's a bird's eye view, you can't tell who
It was
is. Just looks like a
actually,
woman.
it was, I was looking at the trivia. It was a different actress, and it was one of the
okay.
backup dancers in the Pump It Up
Oh, nice.
thing.
Okay,
But
cool.
yeah, I feel like I didn't get you kind of described like what Sue represents, but I don't think that you answered my question in terms of like who is Sue as a person. I think that you did say something very interesting though, is that Sue is sort of like the dark side of Elizabeth, or like maybe like the not even like the road not traveled because she's just traveling the same road again, but you talk about like the shadow side of her, I guess you could say. But earlier you kind of expressed that her instincts are to do the same thing. It's just like, I'm gonna go to the studio and I'm gonna enroll, like get this same position or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't see Sue as that. Like I don't see her as like an evil version of this character or anything like that. I see her as the same thing. I just see her as very underdeveloped. Like we did not get to explore the pathos or the psyche of this person, because here's the thing, there's a lot of opportunities that are not taken. Like we see at one point that I mean, Sue has been abusing the substance in that it's been 3 months and Elizabeth has not been woken up. And at this point, she has a boyfriend. She's moved him in. You know, this is a character that we see once in this one scene, and then he runs off. But I would have liked to have seen the other side of this. Like we saw everything that you described with Elizabeth and just like this loneliness. But I want to see the side of this character who is, you know, essentially hiding this monstrous secret. And it's like, how do I balance my life? You know, especially when you have commitments to a job and you know, relationships to tend to. What is the drama that comes from that? What are the challenges and the obstacles that we see? And we never see that. And that's why I feel that as a character, Sue is just sort of like this blank slate. And I feel that, you know, once you get that moment where they're both there at the same time and they're just like having this brawl to the death, because like I guess she ostensibly does kill Elizabeth, and or at least at that point before like the monster version comes back later. But we're with Sue in the final act of this movie and just going through the whole thing, and now we're seeing her kind of falling apart and her teeth are coming out and she's got to go back and take the substance again. But it's just like I don't really give a shit about this. Like if that's the thing, if just like they're not a shared soul, like what is this character? Like who is she that we've been with this entire time that now this is happening to her? So again, like these are the areas of the movie where it's just like I needed more. And I feel like we psychologically we did not explore who this character was. We saw her being kind of a cunt on set when, you know, that thing popped up in her bum, or her thigh or whatever.
In the nightmare, in Elizabeth's nightmare, yeah. Well, okay, because this is the thing. I also kind of enjoy the absence of, like, there's a glimmer of it for me, and I like that it gets lost, because I feel like it's kind of like Coralie's way of explaining like kind of what it is when your priorities become completely externally based and all of your validation you look to be reflected back to you in the faces of men as a woman. And I that's why I kind of
do you think it's just men? Do you don't think that it's other women who are, I mean, like you can look at that whole last scene and just like the predominantly the ones who are the most frightened of her, or like at least vocally, are the women. So
well, that's Monstro Elizasu. So,
but still, I mean, like, yeah, but you could, I mean, like, this is a character who sees herself as a monster in whatever form she's in.
Yes, but I don't think that that's necessarily what I love about Monstro Elizasu, and what I love about the fact that like she's comprised of like a face of Sue and a face of Elizabeth, and then all of these other just like conglomerate, you know, limbs just randomly, just kind of like appendages sticking out of this mass. to the point, oh God, there's so much to talk about with the design of that creature as well. But what I love about her existence, to talk about her for a moment, Monstro Elizasu, is the fact that like she's born of Sue. She is more unnatural than Sue is, because she is something that the label full on says, no, single use only. You're not supposed to go down this path, but you don't care. You haven't listened to the rules anyway. So, all right, here it comes. Here comes Monstro Elizasu and her immediate, what?
Oh, finish your thoughts, sorry.
Her immediate instinct is to primp, and is to, and again, because she doesn't fit this ideal, but she still wants to, there is an innocence to her that I really gravitate to. I kind of love the fact that she takes like the little strand of long hair sticking out of one section of her head and takes the curling iron and rolls it up, and she doesn't know how to use it, and it's so little hair that it just fries it off and it disconnects, and she just kind of looks at the hair and looks at the little hair like sitting there. It's just kind of just kind of sighs like, oh, well, I could put my earrings in still, though. An ear would be here, wouldn't it? And my other ear, well, it's up there, so I'll just poke it up there. And it's all about wanting to please people. It's all coming from this point, which is also, again, I feel like people pleasers, and as someone who in my day, I've been a people pleaser myself, I tend to chuck it these days, but as someone who understands that impulse, I love the fact that like she wants to still take the stage. She doesn't think she's pretty enough, even with all the makeup and the earrings, so she takes the picture because that'll make me pretty. This kind of like childlike belief that like this will make them happy, and I'll, that's fine, I'll just cover that up, and then goes up and literally tries to make the speech. If everyone would have just stood there and just been like, I mean, she even has the delusion as she's going into the hallway that she's getting this incredible warm welcome, and she's being told she's enough, and she's being told that she's irreplaceable, and it's echoed again later with the Elizabeth face on the star. I love that bookend, by the way. But I think the thing that gets to me the most is the fact that like every single one of them buys into the commercial. It buys into the rhetoric that like it's up to them to tell you whether you're worthy or not. It's up to you to show up, look as pretty as possible, smile, and wait for the applause. And if it's not there, it's your fault. So I think the Sue is kind of like, I think, again, we begin with what seems like compassion and a natural instinct to take care of something that you are connected to. And then that slowly evolves. I feel like the first time the cord is kind of cut, as it were, is when she builds that separate room and shuts up Elizabeth in a dark room because it's no longer convenient for her, and she doesn't want to be confronted with the thing that they both loathe. And then as it progresses, you just see her forget where she came from and just continually just smile, which again, I love that the irony of like the first thing to go when that house of cards starts to fall is a tooth. All of this beauty that has been perceived, like she's been shot like a fetish for the whole movie, and then one tooth goes and it's like the whole thing is broken. You're no longer pretty. So is it real power? Because it's rooted in something that can be cracked with just a displacement of one single element. So I love the questions I was asking you. What were you going to ask me? Sorry.
Oh, well, I'll get to that in a second because there's other things that you said. But the room, the dark room or whatever behind the wall. I mean, like she knows that like she's going to be sleeping in that as well. So it's just, I don't think that Sue, I mean, that's the thing. Like it's hard for me to grapple that these are two different people because the movie is telling me that they're not. But if that's how I'm supposed to look at it, I guess Sue does not give a shit about how she's treated while she's asleep. Is that what we're meant to believe? That it's just sort of like
that's where your point of view in terms of like this kind of like undeniable shared consciousness. For me, it's much more elliptically.
Yeah, but no, but what I'm saying, but I'm not saying this shared consciousness now. I'm talking about them as two different biological entities.
Yeah.
Does Sue not know that like this is, when it's Elizabeth's week, she's going to be shoved in that dark room as well? Like, what are the accommodations? Like, it doesn't seem like she's too concerned about, her time when she's not conscious, other than to like prolong her stay in
I don't think it's her completely like disposing of her, but I
Yeah.
do think it's the first step towards her not wanting to get tripped up by this existence of this other being. I don't think she cares where she sleeps when she's unconscious. I think it's more about, because also there's another thing about her starting to shut the door the first time she leaves her in there, and she hesitates for a moment and just kind of looks at her. And what I read in that particular moment was just like, again, like one last little glimmer of humanity, like, is this okay? Like, that I'm just putting her, yeah, she'll be fine. And then just shutting the door. And I feel like all she does, it snowballs from there. I feel like it's just kind of like one little microcosm of like where the movie goes from then on.
I love that this like apartment is, I mean, it's such a great set. But I think it's hilarious that like the person that lives across the hall is like not someone who would ever live in a building like that, or that she has. And like you could see like sort of like the entryway to his apartment, and clearly it's not a penthouse apartment like hers. It's just this weird thing where it's just like her bubble, her snow globe. See what I did there? It's just this private little entity, and everything around it is just like, I guess, a slum or whatever. But what I was gonna ask you before, because it doesn't, like, why is there any of the substance left? Because like at the beginning it says like you use the whole thing and it's a one-time use sort of thing, but there's a little bit left. She keeps it, and obviously that's the what's used at the end there. Do you think that maybe because there was what the issue with the substance is that she didn't take all of it at the beginning, and that's why Sue is kind of this like fractured version of what she should be, and that's why, like, you know, just having this leftover bit at the end is sort of indicative of that?
No, because I did notice, particularly the screening, as she's loading the syringe, she actually overloads the syringe as well. So there is more than enough for one dose of this serum, this activator serum that she puts into her. And I'm wondering if also, from like a medical stance, I'm wondering if that's also because most of the time, I didn't see her do it on camera, but most of the time when someone pulls out, or extricates like some kind of liquid into a syringe, they usually, you see it in television and film all the time, they usually push on the syringe a little bit just to make sure that there's no air bubbles in the needle part of it, just so all the air can be out and all you're getting is the pure liquid. So you can avoid trouble later. I'm wondering if that's why they overfilled it, but I also, again, I kind of like it because it makes me think, how carefully are they measuring things over at the substance anyway? Like, they obviously have a lab and access to these, you know, medical kind of machinery and whatnot, you know, this accoutrement, but what do we really know about how exact and how much investment they have and what goes on?
I mean, that's the beauty of the movie. It's just like, I'm not even asking that. Like, it just sort of like you just roll with it. You just kind of accept the fact that this is what it is. And I don't need I don't need a sequel where it's just we're going into the belly of the beast. We're going to expose the corporation and yet none of that was necessary. I didn't need any explanations as to certain things. I loved how when she first takes it and then, you know, Sue emerges and there's just like this mess of blood and like green slime everywhere. And then of course Sue vomits up the rest of the green slime. Like all of that is like I'd say like the first third of this movie works so well for me. I was trying to pinpoint like where it lost me for sure, like definitely like the end, but it's what I noticed is that like the second act of this movie is extraordinarily long. Like you know, act one is maybe like 25 minutes, like, you know, as soon as she takes the substance, like that's the end of the first act. And it's not until I guess the two of them are fighting till the death that we get into the final act of the movie. But everything in between is just this amorphous blob of like just going through the cycle of just like week on, week off, these things. Now I'm starting my job, and now look, I'm going stir crazy just being in the apartment all this time. So yeah, I mean, I want to love this movie. I really do. I can't get on board with it the same way that like a lot of people have.
Okay, I can tell you, because it sounds, I think all I've done is praise.
Yeah.
I did have one initial critique that I guess bothers me less because I'm just kind of like, the mystery. And I did even kind of postulate, maybe that's what it is in the second viewing. But in my initial viewing, the first thing that tripped me up, it was well into the movie. And it was at such a crucial moment where, again, I felt like I loved up until then when I felt like I knew what was going on or I had an idea what might be going on, and then the movie kind of show something to show, well, no, then that can't be true because this and this and this. The first time it happened in a way that actually confused me, that pulled me out of the movie a little bit, was when Elizabeth has decided to terminate Sue, and she's got the syringe and she sticks it into her, and she says the line, like, but I need you because I hate myself. And she decides to go and get the blood reverse thing. And when she did that, oh my God, the first time I saw it, I thought, oh my God, you'd rather die and let her be kind of like, because you are a living organism, you can always terminate her and have your own full life. But I was wondering, like, are you going to circulate your blood like in a way that reverses so she can go on and live and be a complete entity, and you're just going to die, so the thing's going to kill you? And I thought that's what was happening, so I almost started crying. But then they had the standoff, and they were both very awake and very kind of enthusiastic about defending or offending each other. So I was like, wait, one of you should be dead, right? So that confused me the first time I saw it.
And somehow, like, Sue has superhuman strength. But the thing that, like, wouldn't make sense about that, and that's, I guess that's why we get to the point at the end of the movie where it's, like, expedited. Because if Elizabeth is dead, Sue will herself die. Because it's like we see that, like, when the week is up and she's, hasn't done the whatever, like, everyday balance or whatever the fuck it is. So without that, she's kind of done. Because that's when we see her teeth start to fall out, because she's just going to rapidly decompose.
Sure. Well, the only way I could kind of explain it to myself as I was wondering, because I knew it was coming this time, and I was just kind of like, let me see if I can make some sense out of it. And the only thing I could think was, maybe the Terminator serum only works on the replicant version, and it doesn't have the same effect on us as people. Like, maybe it's only toxic to the thing it creaed. That's the only thing I can think, and I'm kind of okay with it. The only other thing, because I had kind of a reverse reaction in terms of the sectioning of the movie. Like, I thought the first 2/3, if we can call it that, let's say the first 2 hours, I was just kind of like, I'm agog. I'm here. I'm gagging. I am here for this movie. And then once we got into the third act, it wasn't that I felt like anything should be cut flat out, but I did feel like things could have been trimmed. We spent a lot of time establishing, I think, I wonder if Coralie just wanted us to spend more time with Monstro Eliza Sue, but I just kind of felt like there were moments where I was just kind of like, okay, we get it. I can move on now. And I went to go see it with my sister and with Boy Cried Wolf, and he had already seen it, and he just wanted to watch me watch it. And my sister, though, I told her this afterwards about how things could have been expedited a little bit more for me in the third act. She's like, I was fine. I have no problem. It's perfect. And I'm like, okay, cool. Right. No,
that was my thought in the when I initially saw it in the theater, because like she's at the studio, and then she goes all the way back to her apartment to get the serum and all that, and then comes back to the studio again, and it felt like we're spending like 10 minutes, 15 minutes doing this. When, I mean, like, simply, that could have been a thing of just, like, she had the substance, like, whatever little was left, like, in her purse or something like that. Or, I mean, like, I would have even, like, found it more exciting if Sue, because we never see Sue go to the Amazon Dropbox, if she went in there and then, like,
something waiting for her?
Well, not something waiting for her, but she just started, like, breaking the shit out of all the things and took someone else's initial dose of the substance.
That would have been desperate too.
Yeah, that would have actually made more sense to me than like there being anything left over from the beginning, and that would have been more exciting. But
It kind of bothered me in my initial viewing. The
Yeah.
second viewing around, because I knew it was coming, I glid or glided.
You
whatever
glid?
I glided
Gleed.
through. I glid through this movie. It actually, because last night I screened it for my mom, who had not seen it before and was very curious. And after it was over, she just said, "Wow, that was a horror movie." And I'm like, "It was 2.5 hours long." She's like, "It did not feel like it." So
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Yeah, different people are going to have different responses to it and different experiences, which is what they should. It's a
That's
movie.
true,
It should be
yeah.
subjective.
Well, we were talking about well, you posted on your thing about Smile too.
Oh, yeah.
On your Instagram, and I because I saw your letterbox and I wasn't gonna say anything, but then you invited it. You're just like, what to the people who didn't enjoy this, like why? And I'm like,
Why? Yeah.
Kermit the Frog. Here's why. And I mean,
much
a
much
lot
like
of,
right now, like
Yeah.
a lot of things that like bothered you just didn't bother me.
Yeah, but
So-
it's almost like the same thing where I just feel like there's a lot of filler and falderall. Like these are movies that are over 2 hours long that I feel like don't need to be. And I think that it's like the way that I explain this is that my time as an audience member is very valuable. Like just my time in general. Like I value my time as a human, and I want to have an escape in like cinematically, but I don't want to be sitting there and I don't want to feel the time slowly ticking by. Like I want every minute of screen time to matter, to mean something. And that's why like I love directors like Wes Craven so much, because he just knew how to make use of everything. Like every shot of the movie, it's just like matters, every moment, every line of dialogue. And yeah, like I'm seeing a lot of movies come out nowadays, and it's really like seeping into the horror genre, where there's just like a lot of self-indulgent scenes or shots that are just there to kind of be like, look what I can do. And I mean, like, that's great if there's beauty in them, but if they're also just sort of there to like slow things down, like I'm kind of offended by that personally. I just feel like, hey, I want the story to move on. But that's, different strokes for different folks.
Right. No, I couldn't
you
agree.
said.
I couldn't agree with you more. I just don't feel like the substance is one of an example of like that kind of indulgence for me personally. I have definitely sat through movies where I'm just kind of like, will you just get to the point, in an imaginary conversation I have with the director where I feel like I can coach him through
Can you
the
give me
direction of his movie.
Give me an example of one of those movies.
No.
Let
me see. What was the
like
last-
anything that we've covered on the Cherry Picker.
Oh God, you're putting me on the spot. You know I don't do well on the spot. What's the last movie that I saw where I felt like, God, this is a slog, and I wish I could. I have to look at my letterbox. My memory is unreliable. Let me look. You talk while I find an example for you.
Yeah.
Say something else.
Something else. What is Mubi, because this is like Mubi Studios.
Yeah.
Is that what is Mubi? Because
I'm
thought it was
glad
like a
you asked,
streaming
Zach.
platform. Yeah.
It is. Actually, we didn't talk about how you can watch this if you want to. At this point, people listening have probably already seen it. But it's been available via 4K and Blu-ray since January of this year, or to stream via Mubi, the streaming platform, which offers a 7-day free trial to a lot of movies that are, I guess, Criterion-esque, but not Criterion releases. They're much more international releases, independently funded releases. I have my 7-day trial. That's how I watched the movie the second time.
Yeah.
And okay, now I have to go to Mubi and look up, because they have horror movies that I have not heard of, that just the titles alone sound
Just like
interesting.
Mubi originals.
Some of them are, but this one is from Canada and France, directed by Ariana Louise Sees, I think is her name, but called Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person.
Oh,
and I'm like, I gotta watch that movie. That's the title.
If we thought I Know What You Did Last Summer was a long time.
There's another one called Witches by Elizabeth Sankey from the UK. They have Inferno from Dario Argento.
Oh.
They have Plan 9 from Outer Space by
Does that
Ed
mean
Wood.
that does Mubi own the distribution rights to Inferno? Because we need a 4K. of Inferno?
I don't know. I don't know. Because they have a lot of things that are available on other platforms as well. They're not only movie releases. Like they have The Love Witch. They have Blue is the Warmest Color. We Need to Talk About Kevin. Movies like that. And two more movies by Coralie Coralie F. One is Revenge from 2017, and the other is Reality Plus from 2014.
Have you seen Revenge?
No, I have not seen it yet, and I can't wait. Now I have my.
I'm interested. I want to check it out. I actually bought the 4K of The Substance. That's how I watched it. So I mean, see, I support physical media, and I think that this is a movie that is good to own. I don't know how many times I'm gonna watch it, but I'm glad I own it. Would you say this is your favorite horror movie of 2024?
Oh God! You keep putting me on the spot.
Why are you never ready?
Released in 2024. I didn't know you were going to ask me what my favorite movie of 20. I don't deal with favorites well anyway.
Don't you make lists? You always make
limiting
lists.
It. That's what I have my letterboxed for. But here, okay, I can answer your first question. Yeah. It looks like the last movie that's a horror movie that I gave a 1-star rating to. I can't even access my review for it. What's that about? But
okay, but that's 1 star for you. So that's. So, is that does that mean it's a bad movie or just felt like overlong?
Yeah, it was a bad movie. It was Rings 2017. That was the last one I saw that I gave that low a rating to. Okay. And then I think right above that is the 2 stars I gave for, it's not a horror movie, but it's a haunted house, the Marlon Wayans parody. I didn't like it. And I watched all the three of the Ring American releases, and I gave 1 star to The Ring 2 and to Rings. I didn't like either of them.
Isn't Sissy Spacek in one of them?
I don't even remember. It's that memorable. And before that, I gave half a star to a movie that my review is showing for, to a movie called The Dawn from 2019. And I just wrote, sometimes a character losing their grip on reality can be captivating if the filmmaker plays with the audience's POV, juggling symbolism, traumatic imagery, and perhaps a terrain that character must wade through. And sometimes the experience is just rudderless, unpoignant, and interminably monotonous. So, there are movies where I'm just kind of like, jerk yourself off in your own time. Don't waste mine. Yeah. But so this one, I think because it also resonated with me, because I did feel like I was that kind of little angel versus, like a devil. I would definitely not be the devil on Elizabeth's shoulder. I would be the angel. Just like, bitch, you are so beyond, you need to believe in yourself. You need to get into therapy. You need to leave Hollywood. You need to make friends. But I thought, okay, that was another thing that didn't jump out at me the first time I saw the movie, that I was so glad, because it didn't occur to me to even ask. I remembered how much I reacted to the first image is the egg. The second image is that incredible short film, the seasons passing.
Oh, it's like a Pixar short, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I remember I was already in, because the egg, I was like, there's the hook, and now I'm watching the Star on the Walk of Fame, and I'm so yours movie. And then I saw Demi Moore, I'm just like, uncle. But ankles to the sky. But okay. But there was something about, at the end of this last screening, it occurred to me I didn't look at the little emblem on the Walk of Fame. So I rewound it, because I told my mom I didn't look. She's like, I want to see. So we rewound it together and looked to see what was Elizabeth Sparkle famous for, because the only thing we show of her, aside from that giant, beautiful portrait of her in her own, main room, is the exercise videos, and that seems to be all that Sue is striving for. Is that she doesn't want to be a movie star. So as far as we know, it doesn't get that far. She just wants to stand on stage and be applauded. And when we went back, we saw that, because I thought, is it going to be a TV, or sometimes it's a little record player if a person's famous for music. It was a film camera. So she was a full-on bona fide movie star.
Well, we know that because we saw in that short of the star, because people were walking by and oh, she was in that movie.
I didn't hear that. Yeah, I didn't hear that. I heard a lot of it's just So she was a movie star. So now that I think oh my God, you were a movie star. You could have just the fact it just made it even sadder that like Sue's inclination was to go back and try to be like this exercise queen, when it's like, well, bitch, get out there and make a movie, you know? Pull a Sofia Coppola post Godfather 3 and say, fuck y'all, you don't like my nose, you don't like my acting, you don't like my voice, you don't like anything about me. Well, you know what, I'm gonna go become a fucking filmmaker and bomb y'all at the Oscars with Lost in Translation, bitches. Deal with it. Everyone's talking about my movie. Like see, that's the angel talking on Elizabeth's.
I've still never seen Godfather Part 3.
It's not a fun ride. There are good things in it, but it's not great.
Yeah. What? Okay. So, and I always love to play this game with you. This movie comes out in 1962. Joan Crawford is playing Elizabeth Sparkle. Who is Joan Crawford Sue?
Oh my God.
I imagine Jack Warner is probably the Dennis Quaid character.
It's Faye Dunaway.
Faye Dunaway is Sue.
Because in the 60s, that's when she did Bonnie and Clyde, when she was like peak pinup, you know.
I need to see Faye Dunaway dragging Joan Crawford nude across the carpet and throwing and then taking Joan Crawford's portrait off of the wall and like shoving it down the hallway.
I would have paid so much money. I would have worked a second job. I would have like mortgaged my house. Oh my God. Yeah, I would have loved that.
I mean, I wonder. I do not support AI in filmmaking whatsoever. However, I wonder if AI could create The Substance 1962 with Joan Crawford and Faye Dunaway. I would want to watch that.
I would too.
Yeah.
Okay, well then let me ask you. The Substance, same year, Betty Davis is playing Elizabeth Sparkle, who is playing Sue for Betty Davis in the 60s.
I'm just trying to think of like who would be like frumpy but young.
You want a frumpy Sue?
But it's Betty Davis. It's just like the
yeah, but she was beautiful.
The thing is, like I cannot see Betty Davis in the role of Elizabeth Sparkle because Betty Davis does. I mean, I guess like she would play the part, but I'm just thinking like Betty Davis is just like she doesn't care. She.
You know why I can see it? It's because of that moment in Baby Jane where she's like, "For I'm far too young to know." And then she sees herself in the image and
well, then they'll get like B.D. Hyman, her daughter, yeah.
B.D. will play me. Oh my God, B.D. actually, that would have been hilarious because her delivery. Well, I suppose. I'm trying to think about. Oh God, she's got the most unmemorable lines with the most memorable delivery in that movie. But she's like, "Well, I suppose they ought to know. No one's ever walking around that house except that fat sister of hers." Like, Betty. No, Sue. I need you. Because I hate myself. Can I tell you? Wait, just a little tangent.
Yes.
I was driving, and for some reason, I don't know, I was tired, and I just did a Cher impression for myself, and I kind of sounded like Buffalo Bill. So I thought, what if Cher played Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs? And I just started doing lines of dialogue of hers, like, excuse me, could you just come help me? I broke my arm. I'm freaking like gimpy over here. Could you load this sofa? Just get in the van if you would please do that. It'd be a big help to me. Oh my God, thank you. Oh, let me just ask you a question, okay? Are you about a size 14?
Oh wow!
Like Cher
And
over
then-
the pit. Yeah,
And then it would have
it
been
rubs the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again. You crazy bitch! I'm serious. I am not kidding with you right now, man.
Oh my gosh! And
Ow.
then it would have been best supporting actress Cher.
Yeah, right.
For Silence of the Lambs.
Oh,
my
wait
God.
a minute. Is she like a really great big fat person? Because I've seen her. I swear I saw her. I was down at the drugstore. Come inside and I'll make you a cup of coffee and we can talk about it, okay? Anyway, it made me laugh. I thought it might make you
No,
chuckle.
very good, very good. Here's another. It was almost like that music video. It was like Me Against the Music. So Madonna, but Britney
And
Spears
Britney?
is her Sue.
Oh my God. That would have been epic. I'd still pay to see that. You know what?
Yeah.
At this point, like, and there are so many people who could play Madonna's Sue. I could see Gaga doing it. I could see, but ooh.
Well, now
Yeah, that'd be a
it'd probably be like what's her face, the espresso.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't remember pop stars.
Sorry, we don't know current music.
Sabrina Carpenter, that one.
Yeah, Sabrina Carpenter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of what are some other fun. We should have just been doing this the whole episode. What are some like
Just like, okay,
substance pairings?
Name a diva and who would be her Sue. I mean, the obvious question is like, I mean, it would make it really weird, but like Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli, that would be weird.
Well, there was a meme because I guess back years ago, Faye Dunaway was actually talking shit about Hillary Duff. And then Hillary Duff was on like doing an interview and they brought it up. They're like, do you know that like Faye Dunaway said this about you? And Hillary Duff was just like, yeah, well, maybe it's just because she's so old. Like, I don't remember what she said,
my
but
God.
it was like, this is like the scene from The Substance.
Yes. Well, okay, I'll give you one more. Cher is playing Elizabeth Sparkle.
Okay.
You pick the year. Whoever is the best fit for her Sue. Who do you think would be Cher's ideal Sue?
Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm thinking about that hair. They share a wig collection.
I don't know. It's a hard game to play.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. Who do you think?
I'm trying to think like I'm trying to think if there's somebody like who has like her intonation, because I mean I've seen people do funny impressions of her, but I mean she could even do it. Oh, you know what? Perfect. Christina Aguilera. Wagon wheel Watusi.
That's
Done.
That's the plot of Burlesque too.
Yeah, there you go. Welcome to the Substance.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, we have fun here. Jesus.
Oh, there was another one that was just. You made me forget.
Uh-oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. It'll come back to me.
It'll come back to you.
I just don't want it to be once the show is over. How about Jennifer Coolidge?
Oh, Jennifer Coolidge and Reese Witherspoon. Legally Blonde reunion.
Bandit Snap.
Well, if a girl, she's looking at her laying on the floor going, well, if a girl like you can't get her man back, there's sure as hell not a lot of hope for the rest of us. What are you waiting for? And she plugs her in. Steal the bastard back. And then she goes cold and Reese wakes up and goes out and gets her man back. Legally Blonde 3.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I hope that this is something that happens in Scary Movie 6. But, okay, but Anna Faris Sue, who is the who is the Elizabeth to her?
I have it. Goldie Hawn. So you have the Death Becomes Her reference. They were both the leads in their Overboard movies.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, there you go.
Was there was an Overboard with Anna Faris?
Yeah, they remade it. It was a gender swap thing where she was the poor one and the guy gets the amnesia and he's really rich and an asshole, and then he has a change of heart. It did not work.
Was it Chris Pratt?
No, it wasn't Chris Pratt. It was I can't remember his name. He's this Latino actor who's done some stuff. He's really really good, but I don't remember his name at the moment. I haven't seen him in a lot. Oh. But when I've seen him, he's been very very funny. I thought he did an okay job. It's just the movie. The premise in and of itself was problematic even in its time, but something about Goldie and Kurt made it work. Maybe Chris should have been the rich douche. Yeah. Then their chemistry might have like kind of taken over the way Goldie and Kurt's did. But no, it did. It was a story that didn't need to be retold. But if anybody was going to play, kind of like the facsimile of Goldie Hawn, it was going to be Anna Faris. That was the reason they cast her. So,
Glenn Close.
Ooh.
And Emma Stone.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Because that's another thing. I was thinking about like, what have I seen? We all know what we've seen Demi Moore in, but the first thing I ever saw Margaret Qualley in, Sue, for anybody who doesn't know, she was Anne Reinking, famous dancer and choreographer who's no longer with us, in the Fosse Verdon TV movie with Michelle Williams and Sam Rockwell playing Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon. And she was like basically the third lead. She was phenomenal. I was like, who the fuck is this woman? Yeah. And then I saw Once Upon a Time in America, and she was in that also Hollywood. With our Mikey Madison. Yeah. And she was also in
everyone's in that movie.
Yeah, and she was also in Poor Things. She is when Emma Stone is like marching off, having her life and enjoying her free will, and they decide to make another Emma Stone. Yeah. She's the other Emma Stone, and she does a really good job. Yeah, I love her.
Okay, we'll each pick one more.
Okay,
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh God! Oh, I'm sorry if that was so loud. Jason, please turn that down. I don't want to blow anybody's eardrums out. But you said Michelle Pfeiffer. God, fuck, Michelle Pfeiffer. How do you even? Fuck. I mean, you know what? She can play it. Michelle Pfeiffer will play both.
Just use some of that MCU CGI.
They've done it before. Yeah. Or I don't. I mean. Do you have an idea of anything?
Yeah, actually, there. Anna Lynn McCord. She played. She's probably like most known for like TV, but she played on the 90210 reboot. Like she was the one with like the blonde curly hair. Okay. She was kind of like I guess she was like the Heather Locklear of the show, sure. Just like the bitchy one. But she kind of resembles like a younger Michelle Pfeiffer, just really like gorgeous,
sure,
curly blonde hair.
Or like all I can think, like it's making me realize how many times we're presented with this in movies where there is kind of like an established elder actress and then like the younger actress who's kind of like making good. And Michelle Pfeiffer had a movie that did that for me with White Oleander. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was really good. No. Dramatic. It's not really a thriller. It was actually, it's not a thriller, but there's murder in it, but it's not a thriller. But it was high drama, and it had Renee Zellweger and Robin Wright. She was Robin Wright Penn then. But the girl in it who was moving through it, who was Michelle Pfeiffer's daughter, was Alison Lohman, who also played young Jessica Lange in Big Fish. Yeah.
Wasn't she the one in the we talked about the Sam Raimi one? Drag Me to Hell.
Yes, yeah. Alison Lohman. Yeah. So I would make her just because I want to see reunions. I want to see Alison Lohman and Michelle Pfeiffer because again they look similar enough to like be kind of mother-daughtery, but there's also a difference. I need like like with Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore, there's a resemblance, but there is also like a line.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said one more.
Yeah.
Shit. Who's left? Who else do we talk about? How about
Betsy Palmer?
I was just gonna say. And I mean, if she were still with us, I would say Betsy Palmer as Elizabeth, and Sue would be played by Adrienne King.
Circa 1980,
and she gets to like take her head off, just like in Friday the 13th. That would be
You
amazing.
see like Adrian King just like doing the pump it up.
Oh my god! And just smiling so big.
Yeah.
I was
But the
envious.
substance, it's still there.
Oh my god. But she could beat the shit out of her. That would be like, again, it would be a welcome reunion watching.
the fight in the apartment, they'd just be throwing like spools of yarn and pencils at each other.
Yeah, all of the shit that's strewn about, they'd just be throwing it at each other. And it'd be a lot of Betsy Palmer taking it on the chin and like, what else you got?
Like
Put
a
'em
Pez
up,
dispenser.
put 'em up.
Yeah,
that'd be great. So there we go.
gosh.
We have our see, that's how I want to see. I don't want to see sequels. I just want to see a line of remakes with different actresses, kind of like with a play, the way it would. You'd have different actresses throughout the run, and that's what I want with this movie. Just keep recasting it and making it over again.
Yeah.
Because that works so well. It worked for Psycho.
Yeah. Then it would be Janet Leigh and Hesh.
Oh. Well, I just thought like, oh my god. See, it's weird when you make it an actual mother and daughter, but how cool would it be if it were Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis?
Oh my
that
gosh.
would have been amazing. Yeah. I mean, I went nuts the first time I saw them on screen together in Halloween H2O. So I think that predated when I screened.
Well, they did
Fog.
Oh well, I was gonna say they did the Fog first, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think I saw.
I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, like she's had the experience. Like, what was that aerobics thing that she did with John Travolta? Like she could do the Sue pump it up.
Yeah, or
I mean, they may as well just that. Jamie Lee Curtis is another one. Just have Jamie Lee Curtis and then Jamie Lee Curtis CGI'd to be younger.
Or because I am hot on reunions right now, I want Jamie Lee Curtis to be my Elizabeth and Lindsay Lohan to be my Sue. That's that Freaky Friday reboot I want to see.
Or Lindsay Lohan and
Lindsay Lohan?
Is it Sadie Sink, who's the one from
Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Ooh, see. Wow. Like Sadie's good. Sadie could do both too. Yeah. Just age her. That would be the first. Let's age her with the CGI.
Age up, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you could just use makeup like they did.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But let's wrap up the substance talk. I'll just say that, I mean, like, unbelievable that, like, here's Demi, who's 62 now.
Yeah.
And she's playing 50 in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I for either age, I'm just kind of like, perfect. Love you.
I wonder if she's on the Gwyneth Paltrow routine.
Or if she's just genetically blessed, I mean, because that was another thing. Like, I mean, we already touched on it a little bit, but just like the amount of like nudity both actresses had to be, I wouldn't say subjected to, because they did volunteer it, and I'm sure they felt comfortable with their director and crew and whatnot. But I mean, the things that they had to do, like, I don't like it when people are nude, particularly if their body like eschews from like any kind of traditional, conventional regard for beauty, and people call it brave, because I wouldn't call it that, but I would call it an act of courage anytime you have to like disrobe in front of a camera that is going to be broadcast without, or just like showcased without your control after that, and you just have to kind of like have faith in the editors and have faith in the audiences that they're going to receive it in a way that doesn't humiliate you or take away any of your power. And I'd argue that Demi Moore is kind of like more in power. That was another thing that pissed me off. I saw somebody like a lot of people like sharing memes, and again, we're gays, we can be catty, I get it, but after Mikey Madison, to bring it full circle. After she won the Oscar, these memes started showing Mikey making her acceptance speech with her Oscar in the actual footage, and then Demi in full makeup, like doing the French cookbook and going, oh, like she was, embittered and making fun of, like, the Oscar that should have been hers and everything like that. And okay, fine, I can take a joke, but at the same time, it did piss me off a little bit because I'm like, don't do Demi like that. She's fine. She's gonna be fine. She's been fine.
Yeah.
She doesn't need us.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the movie. She doesn't need our congratulations or our, feedback, even though I'm sure, if we offer it in kind, she'll receive it in kind.
What I do need, though, is a Charlie's Angels 3, and I'm not counting that bullshit one that came out a few years ago, which I still haven't seen it, and I won't. But Charlie's Angels 3, bring back Lucy Liu, Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and I mean, the rules of Charlie's Angel, like, she ain't dead. They can bring back Demi Moore as well.
100%.
She can have a redemption arc too. And while they're at it, bring back Crispin Glover.
Oh my God, that'd be fun.
Just like and the thing is, it's like they're all so popular, right? Like Cameron Diaz just is back now after her like 10-year hiatus after that Annie remake.
Boy.
Drew, I mean, like, she hasn't
stopped.
She's just doing her talk show now. Lucy Liu's been working steady. She just did Presence, which I really liked. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Yeah, you should see it. It's kind of like it's like a Paranormal Activity, but like more emphasis on like drama. Okay. And from the perspective of the spirit, and then of course Demi, it's just like just get them all in there. Just give us this Charlie's Angels threequel. We're wanting it. Threequel.
Put it in 3D. Make $1 billion off of it.
Yeah.
I would go see it 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that this is as good a time as ever to get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we killed him. On purpose.
All right. So cherry on top.
To me,
it's
Elizabeth.
My Scorpio queen, yeah.
Scorpio!
She is, yeah. And that was one of the character things in Full Throttle, because remember she had the Scorpio pendant necklace, and then there's like something about the character. She's just like all about astrology. But of course, like the evil angel would be a Scorpio.
I don't think it came from any knowledge about Scorpios or any kind of like bias. I think it was just because the symbol is a scorpion, which seems lethal, and that seems more lethal. I think people are more scared of them than bulls, frankly. So, or fish.
Taurus, fish, the Pisces. What about arrows? Those feel like that's deadly.
Yeah, but not on its own. Like a scorpion has agency and can choose to.
Yeah, but the arrow, but it's like, but it's an archer, the Sagittarius symbol.
Yeah, still. So what? You get an arrow, you go. Scorpion gets you. It's poisonous. The arrows better be poisonous. Scorpions just are.
They're toxic.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're deadly.
Okay.
They can kill you. That's why.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tangent.
Elizabeth Sparkle.
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect name too.
Last week we asked y'all who deserves to die the most in Psycho 3. I nominated Dwayne Duke. You nominated Sister Catherine was her name. Across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the final vote was 128 for Dwayne versus 247 for Catherine.
Oh my God! Thank you guys. That was really loud, but
very unexpected. Thomas Baker.
You're so mad. You're so mad right now.
You're so mad.
You're so mad right now, man. I'm serious. Snap out of it.
Thomas Baker, Sister Catherine for sure. State fan, Sister Catherine, because I can't vote for my boy Duke, even if though he was insufferable at times, but he was fun to watch. Something I can't say about Sis over here.
Okay.
Jagger, kill of Sister Cath. I think that's supposed to be kill off. Yeah. Also, this is my favorite podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. We try. Blue Box. Sister Catherine was a nunt. Guess which two words I put together there.
I like it. I've never heard that before.
Nunt.
Ooh, I'm like a Catholic in recovery. I'm no longer Catholic. I don't practice, but I get glee from hearing that.
That's like the what's the sister in Silent Night, Deadly Night?
Oh shit. Yeah, I don't remember.
Is there Mother Superior?
Yeah, I think she's just Mother Superior, but I'm
nunt,
sure she has a name. She's a nunt. She is 100%. I think she was my pick for.
Yeah, no, she was.
Silent Night, Deadly Night when we covered that.
Yeah.
Stand by it.
Nunt, I feel, is like an abbreviation of none of it. I'm gonna have nunt.
That's a good backpedal in case a nun goes, "Excuse me."
None of it.
None of it. That's what I'm saying.
Silent Saturn. The nun did nothing wrong, though. Maureen caused the death of one of them due to her dramatic diva antics. So they were understandably miffed. They were also right in saying that she'll get her due punishment. Her lust for men was her literal downfall in the end. Duke was a garbage person, and as slimy as his face was handsome and his teeth pearly white.
Oh my God. What? What? Wow.
Horrible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Horrible. Your bias is not my bias, but we're allowed to have our beliefs. So there you go.
Anyway, you get first dibs here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm torn because I have a feeling I know the one I can choose that I think everybody else will choose if I choose it. But I had a weird epiphany as I was watching the movie. But you know what? Shit. I'm going to go with my gut, though, because it was the first. It's best when I go with the first thing that I think of. The first person I think of is Harvey, because you know me. I love to choose a man. Number one, just choose a man. But number two, I love to choose somebody who is the problem. So, he is the problem. I feel like he's. We didn't talk about this because we didn't really talk about Dennis Quaid at all, and I'm fine with that. But will say I do love this trend that I'm recognizing, and like Maxine was also released this past year, as well as The Substance, and we've got these kind of like 80s heartthrobs that are coming back and playing these just like disgusting cisgender white men like Kevin Bacon and Dennis Quaid and everything like that. I'm saying more of that. Get Rob Lowe in there. Get Corey Feldman. Get like. Andrew McCarthy, bring him back. He was a great actor. I love him. Just keep it going. James Spader, he needs.
Oh my God, James Spader in Wolf. Towards the end when he had those contacts in and the facial.
Yeah, he needs to go.
He needs to call me.
But and I think he was very effective.
Helmet.
I thought he was so fucking disgusting, just sitting there eating them damn crawdads, sucking his fingers, talking about her waning attractiveness. I'm just like, you sick shit fuck. You are the problem. If you didn't exist and men like you didn't exist, this movie wouldn't need to exist. So
it's funny that the most disgusting imagery of this movie is the close-up of him eating the shrimp.
100%.
I could watch like the fight, like the body coming out of the back gaping wound. I could watch the Monstro Eliza Sue whatever, but the close up eating of the shrimp is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen on film. So kudos to Coralie Fargiet for that, because that is horrifying.
Also, one of my favorite gross things, we didn't get to talk about this either, but it's when the Monstro Eliza Sue comes out and the breast of it goes nipple first. Like it's being birthed out of her and just drops like an eyeball / testicle that just falls onto the floor. And I'm just and I love that as it comes out, all I can think about is like, you're playing with our minds, because it's something that, like, when it appears in film, it needs to be censored, it needs to be jerked off to, it needs to be, you know, fetishized and everything like that. And it's like, look how attractive I am with my with my,
Well, I mean, like, this
my
is
titty ball. Oh my god, it was
this is
so
like what I'm
great.
talking about, like the rules not applying to this world
Yeah.
that the substance appears in, because this is like a New Year's Eve show. It's like there's families watching it, there's like
Right.
little girls in the audience, all like these women are like bare chested, so it's like
Very,
it's
very
not-
showgirls.
it's not like, this is not like your typical New Year's show.
It's more about making a
but-
point. It's
Yeah,
symbolism.
but I think
agree,
also
I
like the
agree.
fact that like this was filmed in France, also, and like masquerading as Hollywood gives it that otherworldly feeling, and like very much like how Halloween is supposed to be the Midwest, but it's like Pasadena. It's just like nowhere that ever actually exists on Earth. My nomination, I don't know the character's name.
Okay.
I have a theory or two of who it is. Maybe you have some more insight, but it is
Which one?
whoever the man is who is like monster, and then like swings the whatever at her, and like the head explodes.
Right. I do not
mean,
know the name.
it could either be the New Year's show AD or the New Year's show cinematographer, or maybe it's someone else. Hopefully, we'll figure it out by the time the
But
poll
the guy
goes
who
up.
leads the
Yeah,
pitchforks
because
and torches.
excuse me,
Yeah.
sir, but I mean, like, do you have any right to go up to someone and do that?
It's so ableist.
Yeah, so ableist.
I mean,
Sir,
it is really shitty.
sir, you need to sit down. Like, you know, you can flail your arms around and scream, but like, don't engage with the monster.
It's
You
like,
know,
dude,
just-
she's Quasimodo. Get over it.
she's
Like,
not
come on.
doing anything. Like,
She's
like,
just thanking you
throw
from the
a
bottom of her
like
heart.
throw a blanket over her if you're so perturbed by. But to make that mess, you know, and yeah, it was a bit much. So fuck that guy.
Okay.
He can die.
Okay. Can I say who I thought, just really quickly, who the other one I was like toying with, because in case you won, I was thinking like, okay, he'll probably pick Harvey because he's the first one I think most people's minds go to. But
Yeah.
if you did, I was like, well, I don't want to choose the neighbor because I mean he's not as memorable as Harvey. But I thought I might have picked
Oh,
Sue.
pump it up, won't you?
No, I might have picked Sue.
Yeah.
Because I really dislike her. When we get to the point you mentioned, like the dragging. So when Sue's dragging Elizabeth, when Elizabeth is dragging Sue, like at the end, like right before she's going to terminate her, at that clip, like when she's running out of the bathroom and she's like full on clunk clunk down the stairs and everything, I was laughing my ass off because by that point I hated that bitch. And I was just like, you are so selfish, you are so destructive, you don't realize you're not honoring this connection to this thing, and you were better. You could be better than this, Sue, but all you're doing is kowtowing to the man. And you know what? I can't applaud that. Get her, Elizabeth. But when I think about Sue as an extension of Elizabeth and their priorities and everything like that, it does win a little bit of sympathy for me. So I'd still think Harvey is the correct choice. That's all I wanted to say.
And I think that my choice is the correct choice. So vote your heart, vote your conscience, vote for Zach's pick. And the poll is open on Patreon. So that is made public. So even if you're not supporting, you can have an extra vote there. But, you know, by all means, go over and follow. It's completely free. And if you want to support, you know, we're more than appreciative of that. You can also vote on Instagram at the Cherry Picker Pod. The poll goes up in the story once a week, and also on YouTube in the post section. So if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. And if you are wanting to listen instead, or if you are listening, whatever I usually say, the RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. You can consume this podcast in whatever form you would like. Edward, where can they find you on social media?
Predominantly Instagram and Letterboxd. I am back on Letterboxd now, writing reviews for you. So Edward is truth, one word, traditional spelling. How about you, Zach?
You can find Zack on my main channel, Zack Cherry, here on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram at RetroBitchFace, all one word. Twitter is ZackCherry8. Letterboxd, also Zack Cherry. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, yes, next week is the Cherry Picker After Dark, which we don't know yet. Things have been very busy, but rest assured, there will be a very special episode next week. And then we also we're just keeping everyone in suspense. We don't know what's coming next. We don't
have a plan, man.
No, we just
anarchy.
Flying by the seat of our pants here at the Cherry Picker.
Chaos.
Yeah, that's what we like. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back.